Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 125. Sorry for the brain fart. Dated October 1973. This is an era of Spider-Man I have a lot to say about. I'll kind of cover some of the backdrop here. Here we see the cover. Well, I'll take a look at the cover first. Spider-Man is battling the Man-Wolf as the safety of a very attractive young woman is in jeopardy. Spider-Man sort of has this kind of flashback back to Gwen, because during this time, Peter Parker was still mourning the death of Gwen Stacey, and that's actually around the time I started reading Spider-Man. The earliest Spider-Man I can recall actually buying on my own was Marvel Team Up number 13. And in that issue, Gwen had already died and Peter was still mourning her. So on one hand, the character was dead, but on the other hand, she was still a relevant figure in the storylines. And also I would see her in the Marvel Tales reprints. But there's a lot to discuss about that. I'll talk about who I believe is the true murderer of Gwen Stacey, and that is John Romita Sr. I think he's the guy who had Gwen Stacey killed off. I'll explain my theory when I talk about the letters. So other than it being a well-drawn cover, the only thing of note is sort of this old-fashioned car here. So this is clearly someone who has some money, but at the same time wants to kind of draw some attention to themselves. This turns out to be actually J. Jonah Jameson's son's girlfriend. I forgot what his son's name is, but I'll know it when I'm reading through the book. So go into the splash page, take a look at the creative team. Jerry Conway is the writer. I liked a lot of his stuff. I thought he was a really good writer. Ross Andru is the artist. Ross Andru was my Spider-Man. Gil Kane was sort of just leaving, had just left the script, the title I should say. And so Ross Andru was the guy who picked up the mantle, and he's the guy I always associated with, being the Spider-Man artist. I know he has some critics, but nevertheless, he was my Spider-Man. We see that he's on a rooftop here. He had a strange encounter in the previous issue where basically he was looking to murk J. Jonah Jameson, and he ended up saving J. Jonah Jameson from this weird werewolf creature who J. Jonah Jameson was protecting. So Spider-Man, on top of dealing with all the grief from the last couple of days, he also has to deal with this very strange situation. He's on the rooftop trying to think things out. However, it looks like he's about to be jumped by the Man-Wolf, but his spider senses go off, and we see the two encounter each other. Spider-Man obviously is going to recognize who this is since he fought him pretty recently. The two are fighting on this rooftop. The Man-Wolf pushes them both down. So the Man-Wolf is like, is like so driven by revenge, doesn't care about, basically murking themselves. While doing this, Spider-Man saves them both, however, with his webbing. The Man-Wolf breaks free of Spider-Man. Spider-Man looks like he's about to swing off here. It kind of looks like his heart isn't into the whole superhero thing. So he's kind of in this effed mood right now. And it also kind of looks like he's going to leave that dangerous creature, it's the citizens of New York are going to be at that thing's mercy. However, Spider-Man realizes that, he should just stop with the snappy patter that he usually does. So he's not doing any of the bantering. And he figures that maybe if he can beat up on this creature, it'll make him forget about Gwen. So, so this kick to the head to the man-wolf is sort of like a kind of a coping mechanism for Spider-Man. Now, the two are fighting. Excuse me. Man-wolf is getting choked here. This is a move I don't really associate with Spider-Man, where he's basically choked. He's using his legs to choke the man-wolf, which is, that's definitely a scary move from someone as powerful as Spider-Man. However, during the tussle, Spider-Man notices the pendant on the man-wolf, because the man-wolf is howling here at this point. Spider-Man notices this, and him noticing this kind of startles him and kind of takes him out of the moment, but that moment was enough for the man-wolf to break free of Spider-Man's grip. Spider-Man realizes he's thinking to himself, because remember, the heroes think to themselves, the villains who talk to themselves, and he's thinking that maybe he should kind of pay more attention to the creature he's fighting, or it could mean, basically all his problems will end. So then what's happening is in Spider-Man's words, the moon, it's setting. I've never heard of a moon set, so I don't want to say that it exists or not, or whether this is something Jerry Conway came up with, but nevertheless, the moon is less visible. And it seems like the man-wolf is following the tradition of a werewolf, that when the sun is up, the spell that's cast is over. That appears to be the case here. So the man-wolf is freaking out because part of him knows that there's going to be a transformation, and he doesn't want to do it there in front of Spider-Man. Spider-Man chases the man-wolf. However, Spider-Man trips over some garbage, and I can tell you, in 1973 New York, there were a lot of garbage cans. I definitely remember that. So anyway, so Spider-Man's kind of taken a little bit out of the action. I think his heart really isn't into it. So I think he's kind of like, well, I can try, but I really don't want to try that hard. But nevertheless, Spider-Man's trying to find the inner fortitude. There was one thing I had forgotten to mention, was that on the bottom of these pages, they were revealing which comics were coming out that month. I wish I'd remembered to mention the other ones, but this one they're talking about Warlock number 8. That was the original Adam Warlock title, and that was something Roy Thomas had created after seeing a movie. So anyway, go to the next page. Peter Parker is coming home. As Peter Parker, he's in his civilian clothing. He's looking around the apartment. Because remember, in this apartment, there are two people who are grieving. You have Peter grieving over Gwen, and you have Harry, who's probably grieving over Gwen a little bit, but really grieving for his father, because Harry Osborn was killed in issue 122. Peter, he's noticing that Harry's not home. He knows the place is a mess. Kind of like, so the two roommates are kind of like they're not connecting with each other. Peter is hurt from his tussle with the man-wolf. Man-wolf has sharp claws. So he basically has a nice little cut across his entire chest. Peter Parker is kind of placing a Band-Aid on him, and he kind of looks like, he kind of has this, why am I doing this to myself? And he still can't figure out what's going on, because he knows that this werewolf is a very dangerous creature. Although I have to say, it's not. Peter did not call the police anonymously, to warn him that there might be this dangerous man animal. But nevertheless, he's still trying to figure out what's going on with the man wolf and the connection with J. Jonah Jameson. So we cut to a scene of some of the secondary characters in Spider-Man. We see Mary Jane, and she figures prominently in my theory as to why John Romita killed Gwen Stacey. We see, and also Flash Thompson here, who is a longtime character in the comic. Ever since the very beginning, he was the bully for most of the run. Then he became kind of a frenemy to Peter. And I think the other character here is Robbie Robertson has a son who's in college at the time. I think that's him. So anyway, so everyone's kind of down. And but this is really bothering Flash. So he's basically telling these people, hey, you know that good friend of ours who died just a couple of days ago? Well, at this point, you guys should be over this. And you guys should be kind of like, be up and happy now and kind of not depressing me. So Flash is only thinking of himself here. So he doesn't understand why, it takes more than 2 days to mourn the loss of a loved one. Mary Jane is being very sarcastic because she's also thinking of a life with Peter now that Gwen is gone. So anyway, it turns out Harry Osborn, he shows up in the diner. Harry Osborn is the son of Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. Harry's in kind of a daze here, and he's not really alive. Mary Jane is calling for him, but he's sort of just in this hypnotic state almost. Mary Jane is calling Flash Thompson out for being callous and just saying, just call the guy. Understand, some people died here. And Flash is probably thinking, it's not like they can't come back later on. So he's kind of being a real dumbass. So anyway, Mary Jane, she goes up to Harry. At one point, these two dated. So they do have some closeness. Harry is sort of dismissing Mary Jane. Mary Jane's being very gracious, realizing that he's hurting too. And if he ever needs a friend, she's there, but Harry kind of rejects it. And he does it in such a way that it really kind of upsets and hurts Mary Jane. She goes out crying. Mary Jane was usually shown as really the fun, kind of light girl, and then here she is kind of really, being upset at this. And again, this is emotion that you really didn't see from Gwen. I always felt that the most interesting thing Gwen did was, getting murked, I should say. So anyway, we go back, we leave this scene, go back and we see J. Jonah Jameson. He's going to the address of his son because he knows at this point who the man wolf is, and it's his son. And J. Jonah Jameson admits that, hey, I'm a little scared here, but nevertheless, I got to this place by showing some balls, and I'm going to do so right now. And then J. Jonah Jameson enters the apartment, and he sees his son laid out. But he's wearing the same outfit as the man wolf. So this is enough to confirm J. Jonah Jameson's fears. Because he was 99% sure, this is like 100%. So anyway, the son, John, so his name is John, he's talking to his dad, explaining what happened. And I should also say, and I forgot to mention this, one of the reasons why I picked this issue was because I saw the movie Fly Me to the Moon. And it was a really good movie. And because of that, I kind of wanted to do a NASA-related story, so this is it. So here's the part with NASA. John is explaining that there was a secret flight or a secret launch to the moon from the Apollo mission. They said that this was done there was like no publicity whatsoever. That's why the public didn't know about it. Um, if you see that movie Fly Me to the Moon, you'll know that's total BS. NASA took almost any publicity they can get because that was really the only way they could get fully funded. Because the thing I remember most about the Apollo mission was actually those tank commercials with the astronauts. So anyway, as I mentioned, so the secret flight took off to the moon, and John was one of the astronauts. John Jameson was in the first issue of Spider-Man. He was the astronaut that Spider-Man saved. So anyway, John's on the moon. It's well drawn right here, the spacesuits and all that. And he notices a rock that's unique to basically the rest of the dust bowl that is the moon. Obviously, he took that sample back to him to Earth. It turns out that he kind of has a friend in the decontamination center, and he said, you know what, hey, I want to use that rock as a pendant for a few days. So can you just fetch out this government property for me, and kind of allow me to drill a couple holes so I can tie a necklace to it. Apparently NASA allowed this. So John Jr. has this really kind of tacky pendant on his neck here, and he's driving at night. Oh, it also says here that underneath, I'm not looking at these titles, Marvel Team Up 14 was on the newsstand. So when this issue came out, so this issue came out around the time that I had bought that Marvel Team Up 13. So yeah, I just missed the whole Gwen storyline as a kid. I was 6 years old. So anyway, the moon is coming up. It's a full moon. John takes notice of this as he's driving because the pendant is reacting, and it's glowing and it's glowing, and it's transforming John into the man-wolf as he's driving this car. He also drives a truck off the road. Truckers at this time had a reputation of being tough guys. So this guy was going to confront this reckless driver for almost driving him off the road. Then he's confronted with the man-wolf. So yeah, that encounter might have ended badly for that guy, because he didn't really say whether he murked him or not. So then it turned out this was a regular occurrence, where he was becoming the man-wolf. He didn't tell anyone. Probably not going to tell the government because they might, dissect him. But he figured out that he might be able to get a cure himself. And one of the things he noticed is that when he wore this special suit that sort of, quote, cut off the radioactive waves from the moon, it kind of diminished the man-wolf's worst traits. So even though he's pretty ferocious in this issue, he would actually be way worse were it not for this suit that's kind of cutting off at least some of the influence the moon has on him. J. Jonah Jameson, like Captain Obvious, says, why don't you just take off the pendant? And his son, who is an astronaut, so he's telling an astronaut, is my son smart enough to know to take this thing off? He says, hey, I can't do that because it's grafted on my skin. And he says, this is permanent. And this is near the throat region. So you want to be careful there because, even minor injuries can cause, fatal consequences if your neck is injured. So anyway, we go back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man is leaving his apartment. He's still kind of exhausted, still kind of out there. He's concerned about the man-wolf, but it's not necessarily on the top concern. So what he wants to do is he wants to visit the Daily Bugle to get some information. Because Peter's bothered by, or Spider-Man, he's bothered by the coverage that he's getting in the paper. So anyway, Spider-Man he just dive bombs into Robbie Robertson's office here. Peter calls him boy editor. Really, I mean, this is a man who's twice Peter's age, and he has a head of hair that looks like a snow day. So really, you're gonna call him boy? Come on, Peter. However, before the two can say anything, J. Jonah Jameson and two police officers burst in. So apparently they were sort of waiting for him. The police officers, who already have their gas masks on, fire some tear gas at Spider-Man, fills the entire room. J. Jonah Jameson, Robbie Robertson, they don't have gas masks on, so they're taking all this tear gas. However, Spider-Man he knows when to leave, so he goes out the other window, the one that wasn't open. So and he crashes through it. It makes for a much more dramatic effect art-wise, but yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So Spider-Man got out of the office. He did get a whiff of some of that tear gas. So he's kind of a little woozy here. He's trying to wall crawl, and he falls, and he lands in garbage. And I remember New York in 1973. There was a lot of garbage on the street. So anyway, we go back to the Bugle. It turns out J. Jonah Jameson and Robbie, they're talking about what's going on. J. Jonah Jameson's absolutely convinced Spider-Man is guilty. Robbie wants to tone down the coverage, so it's not too much editorialized. So, because again, they don't have any concrete proof that Spider-Man did it. It's just based on J. Jonah Jameson's feelings. So that's going to go on for quite a while. So so J. Jonah Jameson going back to his crusade against Spider-Man, this sort of gives that trope some new life here. And then we cut back and we see Mary Jane, and Peter shows up at her apartment. They clearly have a very casual relationship because Peter just lays down, probably unasked, on Mary Jane's beanbag here. So again, and with the outfit Mary Jane is wearing, I think it's her nightgown. So it kind of gives off kind of somewhat intimate feelings, or kind of that feeling. So anyway, two are talking, lots going on. Mary Jane Watson actually kind of took some of Flash Thompson's advice, and he's saying, Peter, you need to toughen up. I think 2 days, 3 days is long enough to mourn the death of your loved one, and you really should shape up, and come back to me later when you want to have some fun. And Peter's like, okay, I understand. I'll just leave. So that was not a good encounter. So anyway, we go to John Jameson's apartment. We see that his girlfriend, who looks a lot like Gwen, is showing up there in that kind of antique convertible. She's going up to the apartment, but as this is going on, J. Jonah Jameson and John, they're still in the apartment. They're still arguing. And in fact, it looks like the girlfriend was expecting John to show up at the date, but he didn't. That's why she's at the apartment. And it turns out that there's a full moon, and a transformation is happening right in front of J. Jonah Jameson. And we can see here, this apartment has a skylight, and the moon is showing there. So we see J. Jonah Jameson. His definitely his attitude and demeanor are changing. He's gone from I'm angry dad to holy and very quickly, and the man-wolf just belts him. And then we see the man-wolf leaving the apartment by the skylight. So the man-wolf didn't kind of go out the door and make itself more noticed. We see that the man-wolf encounters what appears to be a drug addict and one holding a switchblade. So I assume this is kind of basically a mugger who would mug people looking for drug money. This was fairly common in New York around this time. I noticed there was a lot of comic artists who, if they needed to actually kill some type of individual, it would always be a mugger. And I think there were some famous stories. I think Mike Friedrich was mugged once. I think Joe Orlando was mugged once, and then they did those really violent Spectre comics. And I think Frank Miller was famously mugged twice in the 70s. So a lot of comic book artists, they don't have much love for muggers. There's no love here. And they're making it clear the man-wolf murked this individual. However, as this scene is happening, the girlfriend shows up. And the girlfriend, she tries to high step it out there with the car, trying to drive off. The man-wolf sees her, and I assume he leaps at her, because what happens here as this scene is going on, they're doing a minor flashback to a few moments earlier with Spider-Man. So they're kind of setting up the scene where these two would kind of meet. This is the type of time stuff that Christopher Nolan would do a lot, particularly in that film Dunkirk. So anyway, we're actually going back in time a few minutes. Spider-Man is webbing around the city, probably looking for the man-wolf. Also kind of thinking, talking out loud about his problems. He doesn't know what's going on with J. Jonah Jameson and the man-wolf. He's still trying to sort out his feelings about Gwen and so forth. So there's definitely a lot going on. He's actually thinking more about man-wolf now, trying to think where he saw that pendant, where that strange clothing he was wearing, and he kind of figured that it's basically material used for spacesuits for astronauts, and John Jameson is an astronaut, so that's how he figures out that it's probably the sun. And then, right now, both realities, the man-wolves and Spider-Man, they're in sync right now. The girlfriend's trying to drive away from the man-wolf. Spider-Man intervenes. He kicks the man-wolf. The man-wolf is a pretty powerful foe, so he's not deterred. Spider-Man thinks that his webbing will help, but the man-wolf is too strong. So the man-wolf is a pretty formidable opponent. And now he has to think of Spider-Man has to think of a plan B. And his plan B is basically an overhand right. Okay, that's kind of direct, but nevertheless he feels it's effective. But the two are still tussling. And he's even being sarcastic with the girlfriend, because the girlfriend's understandably screaming in horror. And Spider-Man is basically saying, why don't you stop screaming and do something helpful? Like call the police, do something helpful. Again, like as if her terror shouldn't exist and there's no reason for it. Spider-Man, he gets belted. He kind of deserved that belt, to be honest, in the face. Nevertheless, it kind of breaks his thoughts. Again, Spider-Man is going for the man-wolf's neck, but he decides he's going to rip off that pendant because he's not sure what it does, but he says, I just got a hunch. And he rips it off with actually some of the man-wolf's skin here. The man-wolf howls in pain. Yeah, this is going to hurt. And we see that the man-wolf is changing now and becoming more and more human. So the kind of that spell of the werewolf has been broken. John Jr. goes back to being normal. I'm assuming that when he tore off that pendant and all that skin, it kind of affected all those blood vessels that are there. Probably the man-wolf had thicker skin, So it may not have left anything permanent. It doesn't look like it, because they're not talking about him bleeding out. But John is unconscious. Spider-Man has the pendant. He just simply throws it into the river. Uh, maybe you might want NASA to kind of look into this and see what's going on, and maybe make sure no one comes across it. Even though I doubt anyone would come across it. It turned out J. Jonah Jameson, he's kind of thinking about, well, my son needs medical assistance, but the astronauts, hey, they can use all the publicity they can get. And if you see that movie, Fly Me to the Moon, good film, you'll see they went for publicity. So J. Jonah Jameson's thinking that. Spider-Man's just, kind of biting his head off. Everyone's just standing around here at this point. This is the wrap-up. Then it turns out that J. Jonah Jameson's actually making an attempt to sort of reach out to Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't want to hear it, so he's saying, listen, you wouldn't listen to me, I'm not going to listen to you. So sort of this rivalry will continue. And that's what Marvel wanted. They wanted to give the illusion of change, but they didn't want to actually change. So after 125 issues, these two are still fighting it out. And it tells you that the next villain is the Kangaroo. Kangaroo's not much of a villain. Okay, so the Marvel bullpen bulletins, not much was saying. They're mostly talking about their magazines, and a couple of issues are coming out. What they were doing is they were using the bottom page to sort of advertise the new comic show coming out. So then we talk about the letters page, and it seems like these were specifically chosen by the editorial staff, because these letters sort of speak to the editorial staff. They also answer a lot of questions they were probably getting. The first one agreed with the decision to get rid of Gwen Stacey as a character, and he was saying that basically that was the part of Spider-Man's personal life that was basically stagnant, because that relationship really wasn't going anywhere, and it also seemed kind of abusive at times, because Peter would just disappear, and why would a woman like Gwen kind of accept that? And and the answer is she wouldn't really, unless she was a total doormat. So this guy Kip is saying, hey, I'm glad you got rid of her. The second letter kind of agrees with what they did, but he takes issue with the physics, because apparently the green, as Gwen Stacy was falling off the bridge, Spider-Man had grabbed her, and that's where she had broken her neck. But the Green Goblin had said even if she didn't have her neck broken, the fall alone would kill her. And the guy who's writing the letters is pointing out that many Marvel characters have fallen from, greater heights, and, they still live. And they do address that. And I think there was one other letter. And it was a guy who had also suggested that Gwen go. This one is sort of giving the kind of the viewpoint that editorial had, that they needed to reset the comic, and he also it sounds like he wants Mary Jane and Peter Parker to become an item. Okay, so the editorial talked back, and they said a few things. They talked about the physics of the fall. They're saying you really shouldn't worry about it too much. But what was interesting was that a lot of the letters were blaming Jerry Conway for it, because obviously he wrote it. But editorial saying that everyone was involved in the decision. It wasn't just Jerry. Roy Thomas was involved. Stan Lee was involved. So there's kind of covering for the situation. Now, I stated that it's actually John Romita who decided to kill Gwen and got her killed. And this is why. there have been multiple versions of the story. It's hard to tell who's telling the truth because no one wants to fully admit that they were the ones who made that decision. But the closest story that seems true to me is one Jerry Conway said, where he had gotten the idea of basically getting rid of one of the characters, murking them. And the reason he did that was because everyone kind of felt that the title was stagnating. If you read Spider-Man's issues from 103 to basically when Gwen died, there were a lot of stinkers. There were a lot of stinkers in that run, and the title seemed to be going nowhere. So Jerry Conway says, listen, we'll kill off one of the characters. He was thinking maybe Harry or maybe Flash or one of the minor characters because he was relatively new to comics. He kind of figured probably they wouldn't allow him to kill off a major character. And he had gone to John Romita, who was the art director, and he was also the guy overlooking Spider-Man. So even when he stopped drawing Spider-Man, he would ink it, so it had that kind of Romita look to it. And Jerry Conway says it was John Romita who suggested Gwen. And he was the one who suggested Gwen, and I think this is why he did it. Gwen Stacey was a character that Steve Ditko created. Now, he introduced Mary Jane, but she was just sort of in silhouette. And it was John Romita who basically created Mary Jane Watson with that famous, face a tiger, you hit the jackpot panel. And it seemed clear to me that John Romita wanted his character, not Steve Ditko's character, to be the love interest. But I suspect that Stan Lee probably did not let him do that because he had probably sensed that the fans were already bonded with Gwen Stacey. And it must have killed John Romita for years to draw Steve Ditko's creation, doing things he wanted his own creation to be doing. And I think John Romita saw this as the opportunity of getting rid of that character so he didn't have to draw someone else's character. And his character can now move into the center. So I think that was the motive. Apparently, Roy Thomas said okay to it. He wasn't emotionally attached to the characters. And he figured, it made sense. Looking at these stinkers, we need to sort of re-energize the title. And Stan Lee at this point didn't really care too much about the comics. He'd probably go, okay, if you guys feel you should do it. And then there was a huge shitstorm, and that's when everyone ran for cover. Okay, and one other thing, the Avengers Defenders War at this time is, I think, issue 116. I kind of read some of these as a kid, but they were kind of fragmented because I would only get access to half the issues. But this is a great time to be reading comics. And and that's it. So that's my recap of Spider-Man issue 125, and I hope to have more up soon. Bye.